All right, family. Any other questions? I know more. You have some?
Yeah, I have one final question for Dr. Parfitt. And to preface the question real quick, to echo your previous points, my mother descends from a pocket of Jews found in northern New Mexico recently. And they were found to test up to as high as 38% with the Cohen model haplotype. And no one questions their identity as Jews in any way, shape, or form. However, I've recently done genetic testing, like other people on this panel, and found I have not only connection to Lemba, but even strong connections to Ethiopian Jews, etc., whatnot, and Yemen and other parts of East Africa and whatnot. And we receive ridicule just for doing research into that subject or whatnot. And part of that ridicule, and pardon me for the petulance of this question, has been people have actually used your work to try to say, or people try to say that your work can be used to disprove any Lemba connection to Semitic peoples, practices, and the people of the Hadramaut. So is it your permission that, or is it your position that your work can or should be used to try to make such claims?
Well, I can't see how my work can be used to disprove such claims, given that the genetic work that we did, both with respect to the Kohanim and also with respect to the Lemba and other groups in the world, offers the clearest indication that there is a shared history at some point in the past. I think what you mean is that, in the book I did about the Lemba, I explored all of the possibilities as we're trying to work out, where they're from. Every possibility is explored. And so there is, for instance, evidence, or at least there's some suggestion that Islam might have played a role in the formation of the tribe, and bring the evidence for that. But it's very difficult to know, let's talk about because after all, I wrote a book about this, and nobody's mentioned the subject, but it's kind of interesting. So if you look at the Lemban Goma, which means a drum, and there's a particular Ngoma that the Lemba say they brought from Israel a very long time ago. That's part of the oral tradition of the Lemba tribe. And so one of the things that Professor Mativer asked me to do was to try and locate the original Ngoma, which had been discovered in 1947 and 1948 in Zimbabwe, but then it got lost and nobody knew where it was. And I was able to trace it to the storeroom of a museum in Harare. And we have photographs of which were taken in 1947. There's absolutely no question, but this is the original sacred drum of the Lemba. Now, the sacred drum of the Lemba, the Ngoma, it was carried on poles by the priests. On each corner of the wooden object, there were rings through which the poles could carry the Ngoma. Inside the object, the Ngoma, sacred things were maintained and kept. It was known to be able to kill people. It was carried before the Lemba armies as they proceeded into battle. There are stories of it exploding, and according to one of the traditions, the Ngoma, the original Ngoma, which they brought from Israel, exploded. And so the one that I found, it was radiocarbon dated to around about 1400. And it's the oldest wooden object ever found in Black Africa, in sub-Saharan Africa. And the probability is that the legend of the Lemba, that at one point in the past the Ngoma exploded, referred to the Ngoma before this one, because, you know, it was always in need. It always had to be used. You had to have the sacred drum, but it would wear out. And so according to Lemba tradition, they would take a bit of the original one and they would make the new Ngoma on the basis, on the core, on the hard core of this, of the old one. And it's the hardest wood you can imagine. It's as hard as stone, this thing. So the parallels with the Ark of the Covenant, I mean, you all have an excellent knowledge, I know, of the Bible. There is no element of the Ngoma which doesn't strongly suggest the Ark of the Covenant, right? And yet, the idea somehow that the Ark of the Covenant should be, or at least a descendant of the Ark of the Covenant, something to do with the Ark of the Covenant, something relating to the Ark of the Covenant, maybe a kind of stepdaughter of the Ark of the Covenant, but something which clearly incorporates, you know, the idea of the Ark of the Covenant. And that this thing was carried across Africa, as we know. There's even one reference which may be to that. And it was carried by priests who themselves carried the Cohen modal haplotype. It's highly suggestive, isn't it, of, you know, to any reasonable person, I would think, that, you know, in some attenuated form, after many peregrinations, the Ark or something like it, a descendant of the Ark, came into Africa and was and formed part of the tribal beliefs and practices of the Lemba. But, you know, the fact that this isn't accepted by anybody is, I think, suggestive of absolute prejudice. People don't like to think that such a sacred object finished up in Africa, it doesn't sort of fit the pattern